Yeah, I want to continue my discussion from earlier today when I was disconnected, dealing with the codex, the code, and how black people we need our own code. Okay, I thought about it. I got more new, fresh ideas. In order for us to be seen as an individual group, we have to determine who is not the group, who is in a group and who is not in a group, who are neutral in our dealings, who is the enemy. And how do you determine who is the enemy? You determine who your enemy is based on how they treat you. In the Bible, they say they dealt with us treacherously, treacherous dealers. Now, who dealt with black people in America treacherously? For one, the United States government, they deal with us treacherously. For two, everybody else deal with the black Americans treacherously. Now, black Americans also deal with each other treacherously, deceptively, with ill will. But I would say this: black people cannot be enemies of black people. You can have disagreements, you can have disputes, but only other groups can be an enemy. An individual cannot be an enemy of a group. An individual can be an enemy combatant. An individual can be a national of a group, but the group itself has to be deemed the enemy. And we have to figure out who are the groups that we deal with. We have to identify these groups, and we can learn from Jewish people how to identify groups and how to determine who are our enemies, who doesn't serve our best interests, who is actually doing harm towards us on behalf of another group, a foreign group. See, everybody in America, we're divided by groups. The biggest deception that has been perpetrated against the black people is we have been deceived to believe that we are a member of a people of color, a group called color, with all people that's not deemed Caucasians, white people, right? And this fantasy, this deception has caused us to let our guards down, to be deceived, to be exploited by these groups of people who all represent groups, nations of people. They're not just they're not by themselves. They're representing a group, and that group has interests. And every group of people on Earth's interest is self-preservation and food, clothing, and shelter in order to secure their self-preservation, right? What do these groups of people need, or what are their interests in black Americans in their dealings, right? See, black Americans are rich in land and resources. Our communities are full of buildings, houses, parks, schools, infrastructure. This is attractive to other less fortunate groups of people who dwell all over the earth. But these other groups of people are capitalizing and taking advantage of our naivety, because they know that we believe that we're members of the same group. And by us believing that we're members of the same group, we will allow them in. We will assist them in conquering us, colonizing us as a group. But we got to eliminate that whole dynamic. And the best way to eliminate that dynamic is to determine who we are and who we are not. We are not colored people. We are not Mexicans. We are not Caucasians. We are not Arab people. All of these colored people are not our people. We are not members of the same nation. All of these nations of people have flags. They have a homeland with resources and assistance. The black Americans don't have assistance. We don't have an allied nation serving our best interest and are willing to defend us against our enemies, right? But we haven't really identified who is our enemies. in order to actually defend against these enemies. We just see white people, right? Now, all the so-called white people that exist on planet Earth, they are not members of the same group. You have Irish people, you have Indian people, you have British people, French people. You have a lot of different groups of white people, Spanish people, Portuguese people, and all of these particular groups of people, these nations of people, they have more than just white people in their group. You know, this is nationalism. And you could be one group of people can be an ally nation. Another group of people can be an enemy nation, right? Enemy group. You know, it's not just universal, right? But who deals with the black people treacherously and with hostility? That's everybody. So we have to assume that everybody that's not black people in America, that's not black American people, are our enemies, right? Now, how do you deal with your enemies? That's a deep question. How do you deal with your enemies? But luckily for us, there was a man, a general by the name of Sun Tzu, who wrote a book called The Art of War. He was part of the Mongolian army, you know, in China, when he had, you know, the Ming dynasty, whatever dynasty it was. But he wrote a book dealing with how to deal with your enemy, right? The Art of War. The first thing he say is, in order to know your enemy, you got to know yourself, right? Once you know who you are, you'll know who you're not. Also, every activity dealing with your enemy is war. Even in peace, even not engaging in war, is warfare. Psychological warfare. He says, you don't have to actually fight the enemy in order to defeat the enemy. You can defeat the enemy without even fighting the enemy, using fear. If the enemy is afraid, they'll forfeit. And the main idea of the art of war is to be efficient, to waste as little as possible. He say, use the enemy's resources to your advantage. Use the enemy's horses. Use the enemy's members of the enemy's army can actually be part of your army. And this was a tactic employed by Hannibal before Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War. When the Carthaginians was conquering the Romans, they actually converted a lot of Roman soldiers into the Carthaginian army. But you could use the enemy's resources to your advantage, the enemy's land, the enemy's members. Also, you got to employ spies. You could use the enemies as spies to gain intelligence as to what plan and what plot the enemy has against you. We need intelligence against everybody who's engaging in us, right? In the black community, we have a lot of foreign people capitalizing on the black community. And we don't know what these people want, what these people's intentions are, where these people live. We don't know what these people represent, who these people are. Are they spies? What? We just let anybody come in because they're colored people, right? And we think we're members of the same group, but we're not. These people represent a country. They represent a nation. Okay, they could be spies scoping out intelligence on us, you know. And also in The Art of War, he wrote methods of how to deal with the enemy based on proximity and based on size. He said if the enemy is 10 times bigger than you, avoid the enemy at all costs. This means separation. Separate from the enemy. Hide from the enemy. Because if the enemy knows they have this, if they outnumber you at this magnitude, they can easily wipe you out. If your numbers are equal to the enemy, you got to stalemate. You got to post up next to the enemy, adjacent to the enemy. If you're 10 times bigger than the enemy, you got to surround the enemy. Hold the enemy in. That's how you deal with the enemy. You got to separate from the enemy, post up next to the enemy, or surround the enemy. based on your position and your size, your strengths. You got to know your enemy's strength, your enemy's weakness, what your enemy has in plan for you. Also, to deal with the enemy, he wrote, never fight an uphill battle, because the enemy always has an advantage, because they could use the law of nature, the law of gravity and physics against you as an ally. All they gotta do is push a rock and they'll come down and destroy you. Always fight on always try to have the advantage, the high ground against the enemy. Meaning your strengths, your economics, your money. Never engage the enemy if the enemy has the high ground, if they have more money, more power, more people. And always avoid an even playing field. Always only attack when you have the advantage. But that's subjective. You could interpret that many different ways, you know. You got your money up, you got your education up, you got your power up, you know, you got everything up. Then that's when you attack. Or you don't even have to attack. They'll be so scared they'll just forfeit and leave, retreat, stay far away from you. But the battle will always exist, right? The enemy can also be so afraid they will be your ally, just so you won't destroy them. This is how Genghis Khan conquered most of the world, because people were so scared they just joined them. You see what I'm saying? But the Black Americans has to be seen as an individual group with members, and the members of our group has to have incentive. It has to be beneficial for them to be a member. They must be protected against destruction, against violation, against harm. And those who harm one of our members, they must face retaliation, extreme retaliation. Now, retaliation doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, physical retaliation with war. Like when Martin Luther King, he was around, he employed a retaliation of economics, the boycott. Every time something happened to blacks, he organized black people all over America to not support certain businesses or certain products. And that forced the owners of those corporations to encourage Congress or whatever to, you know, pass legislation to bow to the will of Martin Luther King. That was his way of using retaliation and power to get things to come. He raised war a different way, like non-violently. But he was waging war, economic war. But the members of the black people in America, even though they don't accept, they might not know that they're members, they are members. And just like how America forced black people to become members of the United States by just passing legislation, the 14th Amendment, and just claiming us as U.S. citizens because we was born here, these so-called black people are members. And they must be protected, and they must be assisted. You can't see a black person that's American, black person, homeless. They must be helped with housing. They must be helped with businesses, jobs, money, you know. And we must encourage that particular treatment to members, that specific treatment. We don't treat everybody, outside people, we don't treat non-members better than we treat members. That's just self-defeating. You know, and people have to be proud to be members of this group, to know that you got millions of people ready to do whatever for you, to help you, to assist you. And members who don't want to comply, they have to be encouraged to comply. And that could be interpreted any way, you know, encouraged, you know, persuaded, using logic, using reason, but not necessarily violence. You know, you can't really force a people to comply violently. That would just ensure that they would work as a spy against you to destroy you. But regardless if black Americans believe that we're members or not of a unique individual group, America treat us as an individual group, as if we have the ability to wage war. They're waging war, and they have allies helping them wage war against the black Americans, right? They are actually employing foreign combatants, illegal immigrants or whatever, to help destroy us in America. Even if you don't even see yourself as a member of the group, you're a victim of the group. The police force, who are primarily ran by Caucasians, are acting like violent, hostile military against the black Americans. You know, they're acting as enemies against us, but we just see us as an individual, so we let that one individual that was destroyed handle that. But they're attacking us as a whole, so we all should react as a whole. And also, we gotta see white America as the enemy. And once we determine that they're the enemy, that they have like ill will or they're dealing with us treacherously, once that they're deemed the enemy, we have to enforce the separation. We cannot allow them to enter our communities, to enforce or patrol our communities, to own property, to own houses, to do any type of business in our community, because they're a hostile force whose objective is to destroy us, to exterminate us. And all of their allies who are assisting them have to also get that treatment. They have to be excluded from being close to us so they won't do us harm. So white America as a whole has to be seen as the enemy. Even though as an individual can't be an enemy of a group. They have to represent a group who's hostile towards you to be an enemy. So that group that they represent has to be seen as the enemy. And that group is basically white America, white United States, Congress, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the police force, everything that they represent, even to the citizen that's participating. The members of that group who are participating as enemy combatants, we have to enforce separation just for our own safety. We cannot allow the enemy to get close, because they will do what the enemy does, which is to kill, destroy, exploit, and divide. So that's all I gotta say. I want to continue what I was talking about earlier as far as the code and dealing with the members, and the members having certain responsibilities and certain privileges as being part of the group, being members of the group. It should come with certain specialties. You have to be seen as something unique in this group. Otherwise, you're just blowing in the wind as a colored person, while everybody else are waging a silent, really not even silent, it's a blatant war against the black people in America, the group. But that's about it.